Who's actually getting the most out of a high-end espresso setup like the rocket Appartamento TCA paired with the Eureka Mignon Silenzio 55, and who should walk away? If you're on the fence about spending a chunk of your kitchen budget on a machine that promises temperature perfection and a grinder that barely whispers, you're not alone. The real question is whether the daily ritual of pulling a shot at home justifies the price tag for a typical coffee lover, or if it's a luxury that ends up gathering dust. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. I've spent the past few weeks living with this bundle in a modest city apartment, swapping out a basic drip maker for a pair that looks straight out of a boutique CAF. What struck me first was the tension between the sleek white FOD and the amount of technical nuance hidden inside. The Appartamento's TCA, temperature control architecture, claims you can dial the brew temperature in 1-degree increments, which, on paper, sounds perfect for extracting the subtle flavor shifts between a light roast and a medium-dark blend. In practice, that level of control becomes valuable the moment you start playing with beans that have been roasted a week apart. I found myself tweaking the set point by a degree or two on a Tuesday to get a cleaner sweetness from a Kenyan, then nudging it a half-degree hotter on Friday for a richer chocolate note from a Brazilian. The Silenzio 55 grinder is another piece of the puzzle that often gets glossed over in marketing videos. Most home users assume any burr grinder will do, but the stepless adjustment lets you fine-tune the grind size without the frustrating jumps you get on stepped models. The real win is the quietness factor. I could be listening to a podcast or a Zoom call while grinding a shot, and the sound barely registers above the hum of the fridge. For apartment dwellers, that silence is more than a convenience, it's a courtesy to the neighbors downstairs. Now, let's talk about who these two pieces are really built for. If you're a self-identified home barista who tracks brew ratios, grind size, and water temperature with the same intensity you might log a workout, this bundle is a match made in espresso heaven. The precise temperature control means you can chase consistency after a few weeks of trial, and the grinder's low-noise operation makes daily use tolerable. The customization options, multiple color palettes for the machine, and a handcrafted Italian finish also appeal to people who want the appliance to be a statement piece on the countertop, not just another functional item. On the flip side, if your coffee habit is more 1 cup a day, I like it strong, and you don't mind the occasional inconsistency, you might be better off with a simpler machine and a budget grinder. The Appartamento sits on a sturdy metal base that occupies a decent footprint, so kitchens with tight counter space will feel the squeeze. It also draws a fair amount of power, which can be an issue if you're sharing a circuit with other appliances. The learning curve shouldn't be underestimated either. Dialing in the exact temperature for a specific bean takes a bit of patience, and the manual recommends a proper waterline setup if you want the best stability. For someone just looking for a plug-and-play solution, the bundle could feel more like a project than a convenience. In terms of everyday usability, the temperature control interface is straightforward: digital readout, a couple of buttons, and a quick heat-up time that beats many older machines which can take 10 minutes just to reach a decent brew temperature. I was impressed that after a brief warm-up, the machine held temperature within a degree for a full session of pulling several shots back-to-back. That steadiness translated into a noticeable reduction in the bitter notes that often appear when the boiler overshoots its target. For multi-shot users, that consistency can be the difference between a decent espresso and a great one. The grinder's stepless burrs are a practical advantage when you're experimenting with different brew methods beyond espresso, like a fine AeroPress or a light drip. The adjustment knob feels solid, and because it's a stepped design in a quiet package, you don't have to worry about the grinder jumping and ruining a batch. However, the downside is that the burrs, while high quality, are a bit tighter than on a typical entry-level grinder. If you frequently use a very coarse setting for a French press, you'll need to be patient while the beans make their way through. It's not a flaw, just a reminder that the Silenzio is optimized for espresso precision, not coarse grinds. Another practical consideration is maintenance. The Appartamento's boiler is a traditional heat exchange type, so it requires regular descaling if you have hard water. The TCA temperature control means you have an extra sensor to keep clean. Any mineral buildup on that sensor can throw off the reading, leading you to think the machine is hotter or cooler than it actually is. The grinder's burrs are removable for cleaning, which is a plus, but the quiet